chatting right now, which is great. So let me see where folks are coming from today. Harrow, Kingsville, and Seattle. Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Folks from across the pond. And great. Okay, we're all set on Facebook as well. So we're all good there. Excellent. Well, that's everything on my little list of things to do before the lightning talk. So I think we are all ready to get started. So again, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming to Lightning Talks with Community Creators at the Art Gallery of Windsor. I'm Abby Lee Hallett. I'm the Audience Engagement Coordinator here at the Art Gallery of Windsor. And I'm here with 4 very distinguished brewers who are going to speak to some of their experiences in the field and many other things that I am excited to hear about myself. Before we jump right in, at the Art Gallery, we always start with our land acknowledgement. And this is an important piece that we want to make sure we're taking with us, not just for this event, for its duration, but also make sure that we're grateful and mindful of the land that we are on, even long after the event has concluded. So while this conversation and recording is happening digitally, today I want to acknowledge that I am physically situated on Anishinaabe territory, the traditional territory of the Three Fires Confederacy of First Nations, comprised of the Ojibwe, the Ottawa, and the Potawatomi. Today, the Anishinaabe of the Three Fires Confederacy are represented by Walpole Island First Nation. I want to state my respect and ongoing authority of Walpole Island First Nation over its territory. All right. So for folks who maybe haven't been to a lightning talk before, that is okay. We're going to go over kind of what to expect here and you know, what order people are going to be talking in and why we're here. So we've got the order on our screen right now. We're going to start off with Donovan McFadden from The Grove. We're going to go to Michael Bowden from Chapter 2 Brewery, Dwayne Gondon from GL Heritage, and last but definitely not least, we've got Ron Parent from Walkerville Brewery. So if you've been at other lightning talks, you might have noticed that our creators got 6 minutes to speak. Since we don't have quite as many tonight as we've had previous nights, we're going to throw in a whole extra minute. So our creators are going to have 7 minutes to speak tonight each. I'm going to be timing them on my phone. Once that 7 minutes is up, either I'm going to jump in or you're going to hear a lot of church bell sounds. That's the ringtone I decided to go with. And we're going to move on to the next person until everybody has had a chance to speak. Once everyone has gone, we're going to open the floor to a Q&A from all of you. So be sure to cook up your questions. You can ask them in the Q&A. I see actually there's already one there. So great, we're starting off early. And just be sure when you're asking your questions, keep them respectful. I heard this once at an event, don't ask anything that you wouldn't ask to a grandparent or your grandmother. I thought that was kind of fun. So just keep that in mind, asking your questions. And the why, of course, we are here because there's so many creative people in Windsor-Essex, in the visual arts and also outside of it. And we want to be able to celebrate them, especially right now when we can't do that in person. So excited to be here tonight. Now that we've gone through all of that. Also, actually, I will mention one more thing. So this is a webinar. For folks who haven't been in a webinar before, you will be able to interact through the chat and the Q&A, but your video and microphone will be off. So you'll only be able to see and hear the panelists speaking as well as myself. But again, you can interact through Q&A and chat, so feel free to drop your questions or comments there. All right, I think that is everything. So let's get started. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. And we are going to kick it off with Donovan from the Grove. So I'm gonna hand it over to you, Donovan. You can get your slides all set up. And once you're set up, I'm gonna start the timer and we're gonna be off to the races.
Well, thank you for having me here tonight. This was an interesting idea. I've done quite a few interviews and podcasts via webinar in the last few months, but this is my first one where I'm not really interviewed and I had to do a presentation. So it was a little different for me. But I'd like to start with where I got started. Like many other professional brewers, I started with home brewing. My home brewing saga began with a tour at Wellington Brewery. I met a very nice man there named Michael, and a little Irishman, and he showed me through the entire brewery and really encouraged me to get into home brewing. So me and my best friend decided it was a great idea. Let's buy a homebrew kit, start brewing our own. Little did we know that meant we had to drink a lot more, which we were up for, but we continued that way. And my grandfather was a longtime home brewer. This is the book I started with here, Complete Joy of Homebrewing. My grandfather was a longtime home brewer. His name was Jack. And Jack brewed in the old school way. He brewed for high octane and as much flavor as he could get out of whatever he was brewing with. But my dad often told stories about bottles exploding in his bedroom closet as a kid. And this is actually what he brewed in, which is an old stone crock. And he showed me how he brewed, and it was pretty interesting to see how much had changed from his time in brewing and what he learned and what worked. Because that's what worked, that's what mattered in the end, was whether or not it worked. Wild fermentation, a little bit of brewer's yeast, always something a little different, but this is how he learned, and he shared a lot of that with me. It was really interesting. My family has been really big supporters of my brewing and my experiences with it. These are my parents, my son. He's drinking root beer, if anyone wants to know. That's my wife, my mom as well. We would visit quite a few craft breweries on vacation that became a big cornerstone in our family trips. So after home brewing for a while, my dog Barley, he was an active participant as well. We decided to move on to commercial brewing. And my first foray into commercial brewing was actually at Jake's Windsor Brew Factory, which is a brew on premise. And I was the first brewer that they had hired with any even homebrew experience. So they hired me on, and the owner was Dave Smith. He's still there now. And they asked me to brew wort for them, and the customers would pitch their own yeast. Well, I noticed a few discrepancies between what they had taught me and what I had learned from my home brewing books. So I started to implement some of the things that I had learned and improved quality and improved consistency. And over the 9 years I was there, I brewed almost 1 million liters of beer. So it was quite a bit of volume out of such a little place. And we just kept plugging along. I got to do a lot of experiments there, which was awesome. Dave gave me a lot of freedom with recipe design and coming up with new products. So we got to do a lot. This is a guy I worked with there named Simon. He loved to wear the Duff Man costume, which is always interesting. So then I moved on. I had this idea. I saw this Sabco Brew Magic in a magazine ad for a nano brewery. And at the time, Walkerville had been closed for quite a while. The only other place was Good Time Charlie's. I don't know if any of the locals remember that place, but it was known for cheap beers and a terrible morning after. So I had this idea to open a brew pub using this little Sabco. And I had pitched it to quite a few restaurateurs in Windsor, and not too many people were interested. A lot of them said, there's no money in it. Craft is a fad. Nobody cares about craft. Why would they pay more? But I really saw that there was an opportunity to add to the beer menu, add to your selection. And I took that chance. So I talked to Jay Giswali at Motor Burger, and I was there for my wife's birthday. And I pitched him the idea just there at dinner, just telling him I had this idea for a brew pub. Do you have any interest? And he was like, actually, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. So I met with him and Jay Soulier, his partner, business partner. And within a week, we had gutted the basement and turned it into this little beer lab. And it was often described as the Breaking Bad beer lab. People have compared it to that, as it was in a basement. It was dark. It was damp and on Erie Street. We didn't have any windows or ventilation. But we made some pretty good beer. It was pretty interesting to be a brew pub making waves. We were the first restaurant to only serve our own beer. That was also pretty groundbreaking for a lot of places. We got into some weird stuff. We did a smoked jalapeno beer. We got to do some interesting brews. And then we were featured on You've Got to Eat Here. That really blew things up for us, and that really took off. Then we started into the Windsor Craft Beer Festival. And as you know, a lot of people have got to experience their first craft beers at this event. And that really took off as well with Windsor Eats. My wife and I made it a point to see as many beer festivals as we could over the course of the next few years. And then I got a phone call from Trevor Loop at Jack's Gastropub asking if I'd be willing to look at a project they were working on. And what they had was a really interesting brewery slash restaurant slash hotel. And this is what I saw for the first time. This is going to be a brewery. And I thought, wow, it's not much of a brewery if that's all we got going. So we gradually built it up. I took on the position, and it was a long process. That was in 2017. I started in April, and this progresses through until August when we first opened. And you can see there's a lot of construction that was done. There were some interesting maneuvers that had to be done to get in and out of tanks. But we eventually got it built, and in July, my daughter was born, and that coincided with the opening of the restaurant and brewery. That was pretty exciting. So the next year, we entered into our first Brewing Awards, and this is a little thing I thought was kind of funny is the fact that I had no idea that we had even won, and I had made this nice dinner for my wife and I get this text message saying, "Oh my God, you won." And I had completely forgotten about it. And we went on to win 2 medals at the Canadian Brewing Awards, which was really exciting. We went on to the Ontario Brewing Awards. These are the 2 current owners, Gord Slater, who is a consultant for us. And we really continued to grow the restaurant, grow the brewery, grow the brand. My kids absolutely love it. As always, there's always something that's unexpected. This is something that you have to learn to deal with in craft beer is fix it yourself. Another thing I want to talk about is the fact that craft beer is about experiencing new, not necessarily the same old brands. And it's adventuring out and getting to try new things. And that's what I aspire to do and give people that experience. So thank you very much.
Amazing. Oh my goodness. I feel like I have so many questions for you. First off, oh my goodness, jalapeno beer. That sounds really interesting. And You've Got to Eat Here. Oh my goodness, I have many good memories of watching that. So thank you so much for sharing. And you made it in like just under the wire. So well done there. Okay, so folks, keep your questions for Donovan if that presentation sparked any questions for you. We're now going to move on to Michael. So Donovan, I'm just going to ask you to stop sharing your screen so Michael can jump in, and we'll be all set. Okay, you're good to go, Michael. I'm going to spotlight your screen, and when you're all set, I'll start the timer.
And go. And good evening to everyone, and thank you for joining us here.
Michael, you haven't shared your screen yet. Sorry, just jumping in.
Oh. Hurry up and share.
There we go. All right, I'm going to spotlight your screen. Yeah. There you go.
There we go.
Perfect.
Look at that baby face. All right, are we ready? Are we looking good on your end, Abby?
You're good to go. Yep, go for it.
Well, I'd like to start by saying good evening to everyone joining us tonight to come and listen to the 4 of us, my friends Ron, Dwayne, Donovan, and myself, to talk about beer and ourselves. And a big thank you to the Art Gallery of Windsor and Abby Lee for hosting the Lightning Talks and reaching out to see if I'd be interested in talking about beer. As my co-panelists and perhaps some listeners will attest to, talking about beer is something I'm only too happy to do, and only 7 minutes, right, Abby Lee? So it's going to be tight. Tonight I'm going to be focusing though on my journey, similar to Donovan's, from going from being a tradesman, a mold maker, to the brewer of fine beers and shenanigans here at Chapter 2. After going into the mold making trade right out of high school, I practiced there for 11 years, and I fell victim, like a lot of people did in 2008, to the bottom falling out of that industry, and was looking for something new. But by that time, I had already developed quite an interest in different beer styles and the emerging Ontario craft beer scene. And one night while looking over a selection at the LCBO, I struck up a conversation with a gentleman, and he mentioned that him and his friend had brewed beer. I thought, well, that certainly piqued my interest, brewing your own beer. And I figured if you're going to take your passion to the next level, well, brewing at home would be the next level. So with the help of some old school ways, actually reading books, and some of the newer technology at the time in 2008, the internet and YouTube, I was on my way to a glorious new and time-consuming hobby. So as you can see on the screen now, it's me and my first brew I ever did. Yes, the beard is a lot smaller and the hair is a lot less gray. Well, my first homebrew was completed on my stove and using a combination of liquid malt and steeping grains. In that case, you make roughly a 10-liter batch of concentrate, gets diluted in the bucket down to 20 liters, pitch the yeast, and if I did everything right, 2 weeks I should have beer. Then after bottling it, conditioning it, I was finally able to drink that beer I made about a month later. So that was the first way I started making beer, but it produced satisfactory results, but I wanted to brew like the professionals. I wanted to do all grain brewing. So after putting together the units you see here, some very basic equipment, I was able to brew more like a professional. So in many cases, it's a home brewer's dream to become a professional brewer. And I believe our panelists here, as Donovan mentioned for himself too, started out home brewing. In 2011, I heard that Walkerville Brewing Company might be reopening, and I was bound and determined at that point. I said, I'm going to work there. And over the next several months, I would show up occasionally just to see how things were going along. I figured there'd be one of two outcomes that would occur. Either they were going to hire me, or they were going to say, Mike, stay away from the brewery, please. Well, persistence paid off. And in August of 2012, I was employee number 3 at Walkerville Brewery. I learned and worked my way up from keg and growler washer to head brewer in 5.5 years. During that 5.5 years, I came across something called the Cicerone certification program. Developed in 2008 in Chicago, the aim was to further beer knowledge and test and certify individuals. A Cicerone is the equivalent to sommelier in wine. There are 4 levels that can be achieved: certified beer server, certified Cicerone, advanced Cicerone, and master Cicerone, with each level being orders of magnitude more difficult than the next. In 2014, I passed the first level of certified beer server. And then after numerous attempts to properly study and prepare for the next level, I finally made the decision to truly apply myself in 2016. Reading, flashcards, more reading, videos, reading, tasting, taking notes, reading, sample tests, memorization, more tasting and reading. And then finally in April of 2017, I took the test. The test consists of a 3-hour written exam that has multiple choice, fill in the blank, short answer, and 2 essay questions, a 45-minute tasting portion, and a 2-minute video demonstration. A minimum score of 80% overall with a 70% on the tasting portion is required to pass. I earned a 90%. I was quite happy with myself. At the time of passing, I was the 2nd person in Windsor and just the 130th in Canada to achieve the designation of certified Cicerone. Being a beer expert, I do offer educational talks, guided beer tastings, and staff trainings. I go by the tag, that beer nut, because I am that beer nut. I'm that guy who will talk and talk and talk beer. Do you have an ear? Let's talk beer. So in late 2017, a new startup approached me about coming on board. It sounds very similar to Donovan's experiences here. This new company was going to be quite different from what I was currently doing. This nano brewery was 1/8 the size of Walkerville. I'd be going from 40 keg size batches down to 5 kegs per batch. Chapter 2 Brewing Company. The name comes from unfortunate circumstances regarding the hoped for original name of the brewery. That was the brewery's first chapter. And the fact that this was my 2nd chapter of my brewing career, well, the name just fit. And if you look at the logo, you'll notice that the handle is shaped like a C, and the mug is actually the Roman numeral 2. C2, Chapter 2. I'm a big fan of classic beer styles, and that is the main focus here at Chapter 2. After all, classics are classics for a reason. Not to say that we don't experiment from time to time, but a lot of our new beers are those harder to find classics. For our 3rd anniversary, for example, this past March, we released our first lager, a classic German-style Helles. So in the end, in closing this up, I just want to encourage all of you really to get out and try not only our establishments, but all the other fine breweries that are in Windsor-Essex, and to explore the different styles and interpretations that my fellow brewers create for you. So on that note, I'd like to thank you very much. Please, if you do have any questions regarding anything we're talking about tonight, please engage us with the chat and the Q&A. And thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Oh my goodness. That is very impressive about the certified Cicerone to have to get an 80%. My goodness. So well done there. And also not to worry, especially given how the Q&A has already got 3 questions and we actually got one sent to us. I sense we're going to be able to talk a lot more than 7 minutes at the end of this. All right. Yes. Okay. So 2 down, 2 to go. So Dwayne, you are up next. You can go ahead and share your screen. And once you're all set, we'll get started.
Okay. All good?
You're all set. Yep, go for it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks everybody for having me. My name's Dwayne Grondin. I'm from GL Heritage Brewing Company down in Amherstburg. We're actually about halfway between Amherstburg and Harrow, right at the end of Howard Avenue, down by that little white church that everybody seems to know about, if you're from the area. So our brewing company is owned by myself, my wife, Jen, my brother, Greg, and his wife, Kathy. Labatt was always the choice for our family back in the day. I think I was probably about 13 in this picture on the right behind my uncle. My brother Dean is in the middle. He didn't choose to join in on the company business, but he does brew with us. So he assists me in helping to get these beers out to the can or to the draft tub. And my youngest brother Greg, he's probably about 11 there, and you can see he's probably been a fan of beer from day one. So the whole concept for our brewery was pretty much developed from this picnic table that sits behind my parents' house under the shade tree. And you can see in the background that that's Howard Avenue there. And we'd be sitting out there in a nice summer afternoon, you know, talking about all the world's problems there. And we were noticing that there's tour buses going by and trolleys. And it's like, geez, you know, there's a whiskey distillery north of us, and there's a whole bunch of wineries to the south of us. And we're kind of on that main drag. So our brewery was actually built basically just behind that pickup truck there. When we started, it was probably around 2015-ish, this idea was coming to us. And I'll never forget one trip. It was a golf trip a bunch of buddies and I went on, and we were at in Michigan, out a little place near Marshall, Michigan. And this is a brewery called Dark Horse Brewery. And it really had a really cool vibe. Everything about it was really neat. But the thing I took away from this trip is there was 4 of us that split off one evening and went off to the brewery to try their beers, and 3 out of 4 of us couldn't drink a single beer they had. They're all super hoppy, and at that time everybody was still onto their Bud Lights. And you know, it came to me that we really got to have a really simple, approachable beer if we want to get everybody coming in to enjoy what we want to do. So in late 2015, we ordered the Sabco system as well. It came in from Ohio. It landed at my place probably between Christmas and New Year's, I think, in 2015. On January the 1st, 2016, we started brewing. And my garage became our kind of little pilot system, our little area where we gather, drink some beers, figure out some recipes, and pretty much every Friday night we would brew. And 2 weeks later, we try and discuss it and critique it and start from scratch again and keep going. We did that pretty much for the year. The whole name, the whole GL Brewery name came based off a business that my dad had started back in the 70s. So my dad and his buddy Paul here were were at the dyno lab at Ford in the 70s, and they thought the job was pretty boring. So they left. They opened up a automotive repair shop downtown Amherstburg. They called it GL Heritage Motors. They had their grand opening on August 13th in 1977. And we were actually lucky to hold our grand opening on August 13th, 2017, 40 years to the day. And both those guys were there to celebrate with us. But what I really remember about that business, working for my dad, helping him sweep floors, clean tools, things like that, was this photo that he had in his office. And it always came back to me. And I thought, well, when we started this, you know what? I know what I want to call the business. I think I want to call it GL Heritage Brewing Company, based on their spirit of entrepreneurship. And this photo of these two guys in the 70s shaking hands really left an impression. So that became our logo. We basically made a silhouette of it. And we came up with our overall logo, incorporating that scrolly font with the GL Heritage and the two guys shaking hands there. So late 2017, we started construction on the brewery. It's basically a pole barn structure, and we were involved right from the get-go. We dug by hand those trenches for the underground piping, and we plugged away at this thing for the fall of 2017. This is basically our tap room before our taps were even on. The local newspaper did a little article on us. So it's myself, my wife Jen on the left there, my brother Greg, and his wife Kathy. And we all have our separate roles in the business, so it works out pretty well. We sourced our equipment from Creveller out of Niagara after searching high-low from the States to Michigan, and we ended up going with this Creveller system, it's a fantastic system. When we had it all set up and ready to go, they sent Alex here with me. He stayed with me for 2 days, stayed right at my house. We barbecued at night, we brewed during the day. And I'll never ever forget the first day that he brewed with us, and it was pretty damn overwhelming. I walked home that night by myself after we had a full day in the brewery, and I pretty much almost had a breakdown thinking, what the heck did I get myself into to go from my little tiny system to this thing? But showed up the next day, we kept going, and the rest is history, I guess. So this is a photo of our grand opening on that August 13th, 2017 day with my dad and my mom and all of our families there, and the mayor. We opened up with our original 4 beer styles, the Backshot Blonde, Common Mutt, Rye Ale, and Stout. We started with those 4. And that next year, we actually won a bronze for our blonde ale at the Ontario Brewing Awards as well. And it's funny because my dad, that was his beer. I really don't even drink that one, but he was the one when we tried recipe after recipe after recipe. When we got to the one that he said, stop, that's it. That's where we stopped, and that's where it landed, and it got us awards. So we're pretty happy about that. Today, as of right now, we offer about 12 beer styles. We've got a couple more coming this spring or summer, I guess summer now, once we can open our doors again. So everybody will have to stay tuned and watch our social channels for that. But by far our biggest day of the year is the day that we release our Applejack Ale. And this is an ale that we use some fresh pressed apples from Ruthven. And we also use Wolfhead's apple whiskey caramel in there. So that alcohol volume is about 7%. And it's kind of, we designed it around those holiday seasons, October, Thanksgiving, and Christmas and December. So that's our tasting room, or used to look like when we could have actually people in without barriers and things like that. And hopefully one day soon we can get back to that. And that's what you find when you pull in our driveway down at the end of Howard Avenue, kind of that farm spot that you can take a peek at and sit outside the patio. Thank you.
All right. Okay, perfect. As the church bells are going off on my phone, so we made it. Okay, they have stopped. Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing again. Oh my goodness. I love this. Again, as a new person to Windsor, I feel like I'm learning so much here, and I can see everyone in the chat is enjoying this as well. And I love you speaking to the name of GL Heritage. I thought it was a very unique name when I came across the brewery, and so I appreciate the context of the story to that. So all right, well, 3 down, got 1 to go. So Ron, last but not least, we're going to go to you, but I'm going to share my screen with your slides here. And I'm just going to also ask you to unmute. And of course, if you need me to go faster, slower with the slides, just give me a shout. But
Perfect.
here we go.
Okay,
All
I'm
right.
super new to this. Am I ready to go now?
I'm just going to do it full screen for you there.
Thank you.
And mute myself, and yep, go right ahead.
Okay, hello Zoom people, fellow brewers, and thank you to Abby Lee and the Art Gallery of Windsor for organizing this lightning talk. Abby Lee gave us license to talk about our career trajectory, our place of work, and to fly from there. My flight from there is a touch nerdy. I love brewing science. I love QA, QC, and consumer trends, and that's what I'll finish with. My journey into brewing began 40 years ago after a Sunday Mass errand to Boots Drugstore, where McDonald's sits in East Windsor now. The 15-year-old me came back home with a made in England John Bull beer kit. It was actually stout. The beer kit itself was a can of malt syrup, yeast, and some instructions. I commandeered a 5-gallon pickle pail from McDonald's and tamed the aroma. This was a 15-year-old kid too. I tamed the pickle aroma with baking soda and water and brewed the beer to instructions. A day later, my parents' basement smelled like beer. A week later, I bottled it. And a couple weeks later, I had a cache of beer and as a 15-year-old, and all my friends knew that. As time went on, though, my ingredients and equipment got more sophisticated. I read a lot. I found a dry techie book on all grain brewing, and that's how Mike, Dwayne, and Donovan make their beer. That's how commercial beers are made. And with the help of this book, I brewed my first all grain batch, and that was probably 1993 or so. I brewed more and more, and my brewing days got less chaotic. My friends and I, we really liked beer. The effect, yeah, but actually, I mean, really, my group of buffoons, we loved Czech, English, Polish, and German beer. Imports were the thing back then. The craft beer scene was not even really on the radar. I think we tried everything that the LCBO had, and we found clubs and bars that had, nice, strange beers. And, with our knowledge, we did tribute brews to those beers, sometimes good, sometimes not so good. In 2014, my wife and I traveled to Northern California with family, and we ended up in the hop room on a tour of Sierra Nevada Brewing Company. And I thought there and then, wow, craft brewing, could I do that a career? So we talked, and I got her blessing to pursue it. Things happened really fast from there. I applied to Niagara College's Brewmaster program, and because of its popularity, I was waitlisted a couple times. And finally, in January of 2016, I got the acceptance letter and commenced brewing studies there. Before that, though, Mike Berkovich and Ian, who owned Walkerville Brewery, I talked to them. They hired me, and I actually worked with Mike Bodwin and actually brewed my very first commercial batch ever. When I was in the back brew house, I actually learned that brewing is 80% cleaning, and you become a really good cleaner. So after finishing 4 continuous semesters of study at Niagara College, I went to Brock University's Cool Climate Oenology and Viticulture Institute to study apple cider making. It was an intense course and lots of fun. And finally, after completing all that stuff in the Niagara region, I came back to my wife and family and took a sales position with Walkerville Brewery. I like that Walkerville produce well-made classic styles. We have our flagship Honest Lager here. We have, several others, Purity Pilsner, Geronimo IPA, and Easy Stout. And we also do a program of a lot of seasonally relevant beers, Doppelbock for spring, Russian Imperial Stout for winter, et cetera, et cetera. When I was at Walkerville, the owners committed to invest in a laboratory, which I thought was really neat, a state-of-the-art canning line, and a really nice Michigan-made pilot brewing system. And at the same time too, I thought it was really cool that Walkerville is one of the few breweries that really have lager as its flagship. Lager is it's a craft product with a broad appeal to consumers, and it's really the perfect ambassador for people who are drinking, the big beers. It's a good gateway into craft. When I started at Walkerville too, apple cider was exploding in popularity. The LCBO statistics themselves said 30% compounded growth in 2017 and 2018. At Walkerville, we studied commercially successful ciders and asked the opinion of all kinds of people on what they liked. And the data that we gathered from that, we benchmarked consumer tastes, and we used it to create our first batch. In the summer of 2019, we launched Argyle apple cider into bars and restaurants. And in 2020, we got the go-ahead from the LCBO, and it became a summer seasonal. And you know what? The cider has been a fantastic product for us. Now I just want to finish with the nerdy stuff: brewing science, QA, QC, and consumer trends. Beer is food, and beer can spoil just like food does. The magic of sticking to process while cleaning, sanitizing, brewing, filtering, and packaging, all that stuff combines to really ensure that what you make today is the same as next time, and next time downstream. Change one thing and consistency suffers. 2 years ago, we put a laboratory into use to validate our processes, and should it occur, to flag anything really strange or odd. Honestly, lab stuff isn't really that complicated. Really, you get a petri dish. There's a jelly in there that incubates growth of bacteria, wild yeast, different yeasts, and the like. And you inoculate that stuff with a test subject, and these weird things get going. Growth media that we use, it's sort of like that can of tomato paste in the refrigerator that goes moldy. It helps, it makes the things go that you want to go. Another neat thing, we recently bought a nice Canadian-made canning line. It's super well thought out. And if you think of brewing this way, the air that we breathe, actually oxygen is one of beer's biggest enemies. A beer that smells of paper or tastes sherry-like is tainted with oxygen. The beer is actually rusty. And the designers of this canning line, they thought everything out, and they just closed every pathway for oxygen to get in. And it shoots a bubble of CO2 into the beer to make a head of foam that acts like a saran wrap to keep the oxygen out. So that's really enhanced our quality and shelf stability of the beer. Am I doing all right for time, Abby?
Ron, I'm just about to jump in because we just hit 7 minutes, so
Okay.
I gotta
Good.
So
Okay.
thank you so much.
Perfect,
I'm going to
perfect.
stop sharing as well.
Thank you.
But yes, thank you so much. Oh my goodness. Such interesting stories. I loved it. It was like a thing like, ah, yes, this is what I must do after like coming home from Sunday mass one day. and like that's really cool too, because I think sometimes if you get waitlisted even once, it's like, oh no, I don't know if this is the thing for me, and you still kept going, and now here you are. So that's amazing. Well, oh my goodness, clearly so many questions we have. We're gonna move right into our Q&A. So everyone, it's all good. I know I scared everyone to be like mute, but now you're free to unmute because these questions are pretty much for everyone. So I'm going to start actually with a question from Brian Howard, and Brian actually emailed this to me before the event because they were really looking forward to it. So Brian's question is, this is to anyone who wants to answer. So in your opinion, what to you makes a craft brewery stand out over like larger conglomerates? So starting off in like an existential question here, but feel free to jump in.
I would say creativity. A lot of the big brewers copy us. Look at the craft seltzers that are taken off. They were popular in the US. Now Ontario breweries are doing it. And a few minutes later, you see all the big guys are starting off doing the exact same thing. So if you want to find something new and creative that the big guys are doing, they probably stole it from one of us.
I think another thing too is the personal aspect and touch that we bring to a lot of these. I hear it a lot anyway, that people enjoy coming to the tap room because I come out and have a beer with them. So especially on a Friday night or really any day, you get that opportunity to get face to face with your customers, give them that personal experience. And I find they really, really enjoy it. A lot harder to do in the big places. You know, you build a rapport with the staff, but there's just something about meeting the people behind the product that makes our little brewery so much fun to be at.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Maybe
No,
do
I
like one more
agree.
and then I'll go to another question since we've
Yeah,
got a lot.
Basically, going off what Mike said, even for us, the tours for us, when we get the people that come in and we bring them in the back and we give them that backstory, and they almost seem to enjoy that the story and the atmosphere of being in the back area and trying the different beers and talking to them through how each one evolved and came to be. They love that experience more so than just sitting at that grabbing their big box beer somewhere.
Awesome. Yeah, I think you could tell even here all of the different personalities from all of the breweries. So those are great answers. All right, we've got a question from Jeff. And Jeff is asking, how strong do you feel the brewing industry is in the Essex County area? And where do you see it going or progressing in the next few years? Big question.
I think there's a rumor has it there's another brewery coming a little bit east of us, I think, Bell River way. So I think there's still a little bit of growth there, but I think it's strong. I think we've got a good, I think we create a good area to draw people in because we have enough versatility with all of our different breweries around.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say I think it's pretty stable. We have a great core group of breweries. I mean, it's not just the four of us here. There's a lot of others that are making some wonderful product in this area. So you see the awards that are constantly being won around here by all the different breweries. So we're an exceptionally strong brewing community down here. So I think we're going to be strong for quite some time, and there's more come on board, although I'm starting to think that it is starting to slow down a little bit as far as new startups, but I think with the creativity and the enthusiasm that all of us share and the other groups, other breweries that are in the area, we're going to be solid for quite some time.
Yeah.
So when I was at one of the brewing awards, it was the first Canadian Brewing Awards we attended. There was a journalist that came up to me and was asking, because we saw you last year and you won again, and that's great. And we're like, oh, thank you. And he says, where's Kingsville? And I said, it's in Southern Ontario. It's in Essex County. It's way down at the bottom of Canada. And he goes, oh yeah, Walkerville won. They're in that same area. And Frank, they're on the list too. And they're in the same area. I said, yeah, they're all within 30 minutes of us. And he's like, well, I'm gonna have to go check it out. Like, that sounds like a great place to go for beer. I was like, yeah, there's like 9 of us now. All of us are making good stuff. The water's great. That's what makes beer good for the most part. I mean, water is your biggest part of it. We have good water here. So that helps us out a lot too. So.
No, I think what Donovan said about 9 breweries being here and people saying, coming here to visit, it's a critical mass that we're achieving. And when you have a bunch of good breweries like Northern California, where I went, you'll get that'll create its own mode for tourism, and that's how I see it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can see the strength of the industry just here tonight with all of you four and all of the passion and the stories behind that. So, okay, so thank you, and thanks for your question, Jeff. I'm going to move to a question from Fiona. It's about IPA. So Fiona says, we love IPA, but often the IPA is a higher alcohol strength than other beers. Is it difficult to make a bitter IPA that is around 4.5 alcohol? I apologize, it's not my industry. So hopefully that's, that gives you an idea of the question.
Just a sore point for Mike. Basically, every style has its own set of characteristics, and IPA is supposed to be strong and bitter with a pronounced hop flavor. And in modern brewing, we're seeing what are referred to as session IPAs, Mike. Session IPA describes lighter IPA. The opposite side of that would be an Imperial IPA, which was been around for a long time. So yeah, you're going to see some session IPAs. There's a lot more that have come out in the last 5 years, I'd say. We're doing one this summer for sure. But yeah, it's a lot more difficult to produce a lighter beer than it is a big, heavy beer. You can't mask as many of the flavors, and it's more difficult to balance. I don't know if you guys have anything to say to that.
No, I actually did kind of, I joked around before that I sold my soul to the devil, because we're going to be launching a session IPA series coming out too. Different hop blends for each successive series. But yes, I am actually doing a session IPA here at Chapter 2.
Yeah, we've got a lower alcohol volume one coming out of those, one of those two that we got coming as an IPA. Yeah.
All right.
And the industry trends put lower alcohol beers as really hot right now too. You can, I mean, the word session as applied to beers means they're lighter, less alcohol, sometimes less flavor. You can drink more of it. There's a social responsibility aspect to it, and it's just what consumers are really shifting toward.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you for your insight. So Fiona, there you go. You got some insight from some of the best in Windsor-Essex. All right. So I'm actually going to kind of combine these two questions into one, because Connor and Sophie are both asking about your preferred beers. So Connor was asking, and perhaps these are one and the same, so you can let them know, but Connor is asking what your favorite beer is after a long day in the brew house, while Sophie is asking if you only had one beer that you could drink the rest of your life, what would it be? So I'll open the floor to you.
All right, I'll start then. Since in my situation, I'm up on the top corner here, so I guess I'll start here. My go-to, everybody kind of laughs at me when I say that, because they're expecting some esoteric or crazy kind of beer. I am a devout Guinness fan. I absolutely love Guinness, and I think it's probably one of the most perfect beverages out there. So if there's only ever one beer I could ever drink again for the rest of my life, it would be Guinness. And then after work, I don't know if there's ever one go-to. It's kind of whatever you're feeling that day, especially for us anyway, having access to some taps that have variety on it. You can be a little more selective on the day-to-day.
My go-to is a Helles or a Kolsch. I know those damn crispy lagers, but I do like a clean beer at the end of the day, and I don't want something with a ton of flavor. I want something I can drink and relax with.
I think my go-to beer is probably the common mutt that we make, and I'm kind of one of those cliche seasonal drinkers where, you know, if it gets to be the fall and the winter, yeah, I kind of move towards those darker beers, and in the summertime I move towards the easier drinking beers. I know it's kind of cliche, but I follow suit to that.
And for me, my lifetime desert island beer is Pilsner Urquell. I've loved it since my early days, and I still think it's one of the most perfect beers made. And paralleling Greg too, I'll borrow what he said. I'm a cliche seasonal guy where I'll go, to Scotch ales in the fall. They're meaty and weighty, and hops are understated. I'll go to darker stouts in the winter, and come springtime, we make a Doppelbock, which I really like at Walkerville, and I go toward that. And then nice light summer beers that are in the 3%, the 3.5, 3.9% range in the summer. So.
All right. Well, hopefully this has either affirmed people's choices or given them new choices to pick from. So I'm going to move on. Okay, we got another question from Jeff. Part of it you already answered, but Jeff's asking if you have any favorite styles to brew.
I like the lower session session beers. For example, we just have one out released last week, our Quintessession English Mild. And as Ron had alluded to, smaller beers and Donovan as well, sorry, both said, smaller beers are harder to brew. It's harder, it's more difficult to get a great amount of flavor and character than something that has very low alcohol. Ours is only 3.2%. So there's not a lot of grain that goes into making these. So manipulating your process and your recipe to get a great amount of flavor in such a low alcohol and beer takes a little bit of creativity and a little bit of skill.
All right. Does anyone else? Oh, perfect. Yeah, go ahead, Ron.
I think brewing bigger, heavier beers are more work. You've got much more grain in your vessels. You've got to rinse more grain. You've got to move more grain. So, you know, being naturally lazy, I think it's a better, it's an easier day to brew something that's lighter and not so much grain, not so much hops.
I can speak to that. I did the Division IPA New England style today, and we had a stuck mash and ended up dragging it out for 9.5 hours. So here I am at the brewery and not at home. Part of brewing, I guess.
Yeah, for me, I don't think there's a style. I think it's I enjoy the pilot experimental brews more so than once I get into the big brews, it's just repetitive. It's just follow the recipe type of thing. When you can start experimenting and having fun with different things, and then, you know, you're chomping at the bit for 2 weeks just to try to wait till it's ready so you can taste it and see, you know, how it turned out or how it didn't turn out. So I enjoy the little ones the best.
All right. Thank you so much. I also just put a message in the chat. We're going to do our best to get through the questions that are still in the Q&A. I think we might go a little bit over, but if you've got any burning questions that you just want to know that you didn't get a chance to ask tonight, you can send me an email. I put my email in the chat, or you can, of course, I imagine I'm kind of volunteering all of you, but I imagine it's all right to reach out over Facebook, Instagram, website to any of these amazing brews that we have here. All right, on to more questions. Ron has a very serious beard-related question asking if you must have a beard to be a brewmaster in Windsor, or is it just 3/4 of brewers? I don't know if anyone has an answer for Ron here.
Ron, take it.
I just can't deal with the itch. I tried it before. I couldn't do it. You get to a point where all it does, it just bugged me. And it makes me look old. Look at it. I could pass for 35 right now. So and look at Bowden. I'm going to give him a cane. And
I just don't like getting ID'd at the LCBO. So I just keep it long, and then I don't have to worry about that.
This worked out well because you saw the progression from my original beard in that first home brew to where it's at now. So, and the stress of brewing adds the color. So,
Thanks, Ron.
Gosh, terrific. Thanks for that question, Ron, and a good laugh as well. Okay, we got another question from Jeff. Jeff is asking, of course, besides your own breweries, what are your favorite breweries?
ooh, locally or just in general, Jeff?
I think you can go in general, just any or dream big, or maybe Jeff will give some context. There we go, in general.
It's tough. I don't know if I necessarily have any favorite straight up breweries. There's been some good brewery experiences to go to. Like one of the first places I had really experienced on my journey was Bellwoods, when they had their original small location on Ossington in Toronto. And that was an interesting experience because it was just different at that time. When you saw a brewery, you thought, you know, just an industrial building and stainless steel tanks. Where here it had a mezzanine, and you can look down over the brewery, and it had the incandescent light bulb lights strung out over top of the seating. And it was a really interesting, cool experience for not having seen many breweries at the time. That, and actually one is Granite Brewery in Toronto. It's an old English style pub. They make English style beers, which is one of my favorite styles around to drink, and they do a fantastic job there too.
Is that Granite, Mike?
What did I say?
Are you talking about Granite in Toronto?
Yes, Granite, yes.
Yeah. The owner of Granite was actually at one of the first beer festivals that we had.
Oh, yeah?
One of
His
my
wife- His wife's
What's
from
that?
the area.
Oh, okay, yeah. He said he was here for some family thing and he was trying all the local breweries. I just thought it was really funny that a guy from Toronto was there for a little tiny. That was when there was like a couple hundred people there too.
Cool.
Actually, I took a love to, there's a small place in Niagara. It's called Oast House. Oast meaning it's named after the hop drying houses in England that were round. And they make some really, really, really good beers. And actually, it's one of my all-time favorite Ontario beers is their Oast House Barn Raiser, which has these wonderful apricot notes from the hops. And I think it hits everything so well. I mean, bitterness, malt notes, everything. It's just incredible. And when you get it fresh on draft, again, just a true thing of beauty.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you, Jeff, for your wonderful questions. We've got a few more. So folks are going to end it off tonight on Brian's question, but of course the conversation can keep going after this event is over too. So not to worry. I'm going to, again, kind of amalgamate a couple of questions here. So Andrea is asking, anyone can give a sneak peek at any new brews being released this year. Well, Brian is asking if any brewery offers a Madagascar vanilla bean beer. So I combine these questions because perhaps it's on the horizon, perhaps not. I'll yield the floor to you.
We're always just trying to come up with some different things. There's nothing specific at the moment that we said, yes, we're going to be doing this summer. There are a few things floating in the background. An interesting thing that we will be doing here consistently all the time, though, we'll be offering Belgian beers. It's another area I like to experiment and get into. So pretty regularly, Chapter 2 will have a Belgian beer on tap. So keep an eye out for those if you like Belgian beers and see how we keep changing them up.
We've been doing a series of seltzers and changing it up every month or so. It's been really taking off. It's a hard seltzer, similar to a White Claw without all the sugar added to it at the end and stuff. That's been really popular. We've also got a session IPA coming out, and then we've been teaming up with a few local musicians to do some themed beers that they help us create. So they've been a really big hit as well.
We had a big launch of something called Pin High Pilsner just last week, and what it is, it's a tamed down Pilsner aimed at the golf industry, really. But it translates to general consumers as well, and it's 4.0% ABV, and we reduce the hopping just to make it more accessible and really, again, to be a gateway beer for many people who are drinking your Molson, Labatt, Sleeman stuff, and make that a gateway for some people to really take more risk and go to something with more gumption. So that's our big one that we just released.
And we have an IPA. It's called a Galaxy IPA. That's going to come out in a month or so. And that's got a little bit of a coconut lime flavor to it, a little bit lower on the ABV than what you're used to for an IPA. So that should be coming out early June for us.
All right. You heard it here first. Actually, I'm not sure if it was first, but you heard it here. So now you know. All right. We got a question from Robert. Robert's asking, at what point do you add flavoring?
If you're adding flavoring to most beers, say, for as an example, if you're adding cherry flavoring or something to a beer, you do it post fermentation after all the action has stopped. So,
Okay.
I guess it depends on what kind of flavors you're looking at too. Some things, we did a ginger beer, and I know further brewers have done it. We added the ginger in the boiling process, so we could actually boil and extract the flavor from the ginger at that point too. So it really will depend on what the ingredient is that you're going to be using and when you would actually use it in the process.
All right. There you go, Robert. Now you can make your own flavored beer. All right, Robert, a different Robert Dennison, is asking, which is better, whole cone hops or pellets? Also, some brewmasters love the Citra hops and others dislike it. Thoughts?
Well, I can speak to the whole leaf because our system just isn't built to handle them. Whole cone hops do have their place in brewing. They do impart a very different flavor profile than pellet hops. They are less efficient and they're more expensive to handle in the most part. As for Citra was a bit of a fad hop. It's still really popular, still useful, but there are quite a few new experimental hops that come out each year. I was part of the Hop Academy this year through Haas Hops, and they spoke about quite a few newcomers that are coming up, and there's going to be some very interesting ones. A recent one was called Sabro. It's supposed to compete with Citra. Canada actually has its own trademark hop called Sasquatch, and it has a lot of Citra notes. So Citra, what used to be the big time heavy hitter hop, and it's kind of starting to take a back seat a little bit every year. So
I have a love-hate relationship with that hop. Depending on when it's used and how much is used, I tend to get this very strong cat pee kind of smell out of it. And I had a cat that used to pee in my basement. So I have a very negative connection to, if I pick up that aroma, I can't consume the beers. Even if a friend of mine made one, I got halfway through and I picked up a whiff of it and I was, sorry, dude, I can't finish it at this time.
Not a great association. That's very valid. All right. Well, we're down to the last question. I think this is this could be a very fun one to end on. This is a question from Haley, who's asking if anyone has any hilarious homebrewing mishap stories.
Other than some beers going off and then you go to open them and they come gushing out at you. That's really about it for me. Nothing too crazy, but yeah, just some gushing bottles.
I have a funny tour story from professional brewing. We had just before COVID hit, Chartwell was doing tours. There's a lot of nursing homes and retirement homes in Kingsville. And we had a tour group coming through and the assistant brewer offered to do the tour. I was busy. So he laid out a few samples, and one of the samples he set out was hop extract. And now most hops are the alpha acids, the concentrated part of it like normal hop cones is between say 3 and 10%. Well, hop extract is about 40 to 50%. And it's in this thick, viscous, honey-like syrup. So the assistant brewer is out there explaining all the different ingredients, and I look over and there's this one old gentleman who decides to stick his finger in the hop extract and plop it in his mouth. Now, this stuff is the most bitter stuff you will ever taste. It makes Bitter X taste nothing. It is horrible. You cannot get it out of your mouth for days. And he stuck his entire finger like Winnie the Pooh in this syrup and stuck it in his mouth. And I thought the poor man was going to die. He turned red. He was sputtering. He's like, what is this? And we're like, it's hop extract. Did you eat it? He's like, yeah, why is it out? We're like, it's a demonstration. We're showing you. You're supposed to smell it. And here he is just gobbling it up. So that was our experience with tours and leaving out ingredients.
Oh, man.
Oh my goodness. That is quite a tale. I hope he was able to get the taste out of his mouth.
It took him a few beers. It took a few beers.
Wow. All right. Dwayne or Ron, do you have anything to add? Any homebrewing stories?
And,
yeah.
Unbeknownst to poor Mike, he was the victim of this gag, but it was around Christmas time at Walkerville Brewery, and we were all having to wash growlers and keep the front of house fed with them. And I was working with Blaine, our brewmaster, Tyler, and it was myself. And we sort of made it that it was Mike that would go to the growlers and wash them. So I got a pair of vice grips and I tightened the lid so he couldn't remove them by hand. And we watched Mike just spitting fire. All three of us were chuckling and Mike never knew. So sorry, Mike.
An ages-old mystery finally solved.
Paybacks.
Oh my goodness. Watch out when things start to open.
That's right.
Look out. Dwayne, I don't want to take away from you. Do you have anything you want to add? Or
Nothing like these
a good
guys.
way?
I've had the yeast shower and things like that, but yeah.
All right. Oh my goodness. Well, that was a very fun end. Hopefully we're all still friends here. But thank you so much, everyone, for coming out this evening. This was so much fun to have everyone. I'm going to share my screen very, very briefly here, just to wrap up. And there we go. Oh, perfect. Sorry, my screen was being a little funny there. So let me just share. All right, so if you liked this event, you want to come to more, great, because we've got a lot, of course, all virtual for the time being, but we'd love to see you back at some of our events here. We've got a tour coming up as part of Mayworks on May 1st. We have our Taking Care program, which is an art and wellness program. And of course, if you really liked the lightning talks, we do have another one coming up that's May 27th, featuring some entrepreneurs from the University of Windsor's Epicenter. So do be sure to stay tuned for that. But if this is where we part, just like to say thank you so much for coming out. This was such a blast and so nice, especially at a time where we're all, in our houses. It felt like we're actually like out at the brewery for the first time in a while. So appreciate it. Thank you so much, everyone. And to everyone who attended tonight, hope you stay well, stay safe, and hopefully it will be safe and we will be able to see you soon. So take care, everyone, and have a great night.
Thank you, Abby, and thank you, Greg, Ron, Donovan. Nice to see you again.
Thank you all too. That was a lot of fun.
Thanks, guys.
Right.
Thanks,
Thank
Abby.
you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.